In our Patreon, thank you very much all patrons that support the show, a nice early mention for you, we have a Monday meet-up. It seems to have become a Monday meet-up. Not always, not exclusively, but it's right at the start of the month, and it's a chance really for us to have a chat with those that support the show. And we look at each other's pictures and we talk about photography, as you might expect on Zoom. And then I set a challenge. And those challenge questions come from a book, which at the moment I can't seem to find. However, one of the challenges within this book was drive 7 miles and stop wherever it's safe to do so, jump out and go for a photo walk, take some pictures. And I've effectively done that today. I thought, right, 7 miles. I couldn't stop exactly on the 7 miles. Couldn't actually find a safe place to stop. But it's-ish. I found myself, I pulled over and I found myself, well, quite a dense woodland, really. Not sure if it leads on to something else. And that's where I'm taking my photo walk with a brand new camera. It's new toy week. Anyway, welcome to
Photography Daily, the Friday Photo Walk.
The Photography Mailbag Podcast Show. I might be the voice, but you are the presenter. It's your thoughts, your direction, your ideas, your musings about photography that make this show. And if you're new to the Friday Photo Walk, welcome. I like to think there's nothing quite like this as a podcast in terms of photography. Your letters and posts, and then in between those, a minute or two at a time of inspiration from former guests. And today those voices belong to Laird Kay, who photographs airliners in a kind of wildlife way. Miss Anne Harriman, who has had the most incredible 18 months, going from making editorial pictures one moment, very good ones at that by the way, to portraits of footballers, actors, and even Harry and Meghan, who don't open their doors, as we know, to any or many photographers. Brendan Barry, who can build a camera out of stuff you find in a fridge. Tom Stoddart, once again, one of the world's most respected photojournalists, and the inspirational TEDx speaker and photographer Chris Orwing. Today we'll talk about making pictures of houses before somebody comes along too handy with a bulldozer, and exploring the ones that are just about to fall over by themselves. I'll try to help a new photographer understand how to launch a portrait and wedding business on the side. There's a first thing that you see moment. Some very wise words to make you think if right now you're in a photographic or life fug from Chris Rogowski. We talk about shed life. Yes, shed life. And ask, is photography like a game of golf? There are some thoughts about and kind of from the photographer who watched and photographed the footballer Christian Eriksen immediately after his cardiac arrest at Euro 2020. A question of ethics and a remarkable, clever photographic essay spin that's very current from down under as we pictorially imagine and compare the destructive power of the ocean and a new wave of COVID. Phew, our photographers, you, in other words, have been very busy this week. And we'll go no further without also mentioning the good people of Patreon land who support this show. And you can too by going to the Patreon link on the website or show page. And also a mention, of course, for mpb.com, who are the #1 people in the US, the UK and Europe. If you have some second-hand camera kit you'd like to sell, or there's kit you really need to buy, or even trade, because they do that too, go to mpb.com and you can buy quality used camera gear with, and this is important, a guarantee. No longer get caught out by buying online unprotected. Right, it is time to go walking, isn't it? So keep those earbuds in, make sure those boots are laced, get lost in the letters, and let's walk.
Don't these Fridays come around quickly? You say that every week, Neil, I know. It's written here on the script. No, not really. But they do, don't they? Only seems like yesterday we were walking and talking about urbex, and I dare say we'll be doing the same again today. Right, where do we start in the mailbag this week? We're going to start with, we're going to go a few thousand miles. Well, for me anyway, but maybe you live closer to Jim, I don't know. Jim Solos. Good to hear from you, Jim. On the latest show, you asked us to let you know if anybody's working on projects. Well, I've just started one that I thought I would share with you. First, though, a little backstory. I live in the village of Fort Langley, British Columbia, Canada. It's a little town about an hour from Vancouver. Sounds wonderful already. Where do I sign up? In mid-2020, so this would, Jim, have been obviously during the time when things were just beginning to take shape with the pandemic. I headed out to photograph a beautiful water wheel mill and stream located about 40 minutes away. When I arrived at the location, it had been flattened. No! And Jim actually sent me a picture of the original mill, and it looks absolutely gorgeous. It's a 150-year-old water wheel and stream. He says they've been bulldozed to make way for a new townhouse complex. Do you not have a grading system? I'm sure you must. And I don't quite know how the grading system works. I don't live in a house that's old enough, I think. What's ours? Late 20s, early 30s, something like that. But we have grade, is it 1, 2 and 3? Some, and then there's sort of versions of within, aren't there? But in essence, I mean, I think if you get to the most graded, the most protected, you can't even, I was going to say change a light bulb, but that would be a complete lie. But you can't even decorate inside some of them without a higher being from the council coming down in his or her pinstripe, inspecting and saying, no, sorry. But yeah, so we have a grading system that protects buildings like this. And I'm looking at this, the picture of the mill that you sent me. I mean, how on earth could you take that down? It looks, I know. I'm sharing your feelings on this because, as Jim says, the loss of this beautiful location got me thinking about the many historic old buildings that are demolished. I've started a project to photograph historic buildings before they're lost. What makes the project a little more unusual is the fact that I'm shooting these images on large format film. Oh, man with a challenge. The resulting ultra-high resolution images will preserve the scene in amazing detail. I tell you what, I always say go to the show page for pictures that we talk about on the show. And I'm going to say that this is a polite order. A polite order. You have to go and see the show page today, which, of course, you'll find a link to within your player app, because I want you to see the project that Jim is making on this 1939 Graflex Speed Graphic 4.5. It's a camera I've never used. It would probably take me a month to learn, probably a lifetime to learn, actually, having said that. A month maybe to learn the basics and a lifetime to master. That sounds about right, doesn't it, Jim? But he shares on the page this beautiful negative that he made of Alex Houston House, built in 1909, and then you get right next to it. I've set it out like, it's a flowing gallery, left to right. So right next to that, you're going to get the scan of the darkroom print, which honestly, it is something you could eat. It really is. It probably does it no justice on a web page, to be fair, does it, Jim? But I'm hoping it gets somewhere close to explaining what this picture looks like. Then there's Glover Road Barn, which Jim is trying to find some more history on. Then there's the Riverview Psychiatric Hospital from 1913. I know this isn't an Urbex story. We're dangerously close to leaping back into our Urbex. I know it's a sort of percolating theme on the show, that, isn't it? But Jim says, that's my little project. My intent is to photograph 25 local buildings and self-publish a book with full-size photos and a write-up with the history of each location. Well, it sounds amazing. And a fantastic story, Jim. Jim's actually known for his work with film format, and I'll be sure to leave a link to his website today too. Easy one to remember, though. It's simply Solos, SOLLOWS, solos.ca. Go to his site, but I tell you what, be prepared to take a whole packet of Garibaldis. There's some beautiful photography to devour in there alongside the Garibaldis. You will not be there for just a couple of minutes, I promise you. Here's one from Peter Upton. Hello, Neil. You talked on the Photowalk about photographing abandoned places. Yes. And hang on. There's a nasty looking thing on my mail scripts here. Hold on. I'm not going to flatten you, but I can't let you be crawling all over my hands. You look like you got a nasty sting on you. You talked on the Photowalk about photographing abandoned buildings and it being scary. Well, today I went out and found 2 abandoned charming properties. See, when you attach the word charming, it's not so scary anymore, is it? The first is a cottage, and the second, an old cattle shed. Hope you like the pictures from Peter. I'll share them. Yes, I did like the pictures. He didn't go inside, so maybe they're on the charming to scary scale. Maybe they're closer to scary than charming. Hey, Peter? And a quick DM here from Darren Yates. Neil, I know the world is opening up by how many planes I hear on the Friday Photo Walk now. I did think at first that you should wait like they might on an open film set, but then I think this is the charm of the Photo Walk. It's authentic. Just don't take a walk too close to an airport. Keep it up from Darren. Yes, no, I think I was looking at a map the other day, places to go take photo walks, and I fancied going. There's a wonderful place called Thruxton, and I know it because I've flown above it, and I look down. I know that there's a stream there, and there's a walk there, and it's very close to a hawk conservancy, and it's just a fantastic. And then I thought, you donut. The reason you know why it looks so good is because you spent so long flying over it when you were learning to fly, and it stands to reason. Thruxton, out of the airport there, probably not the greatest place to go for a photo walk. So I'm going to take your suggestion there to heart. And thanks very much for your message. You can email in to the show at studio@photographydaily.show. You can leave a message as a DM or within the Facebook group, of course. The various different ways that you can get in touch. If I don't respond immediately, humble apologies. The mailbag is filling up a little bit more these days, and I wouldn't say I'm so much struggling, but I'm certainly conscious of the fact there's a bit more stuff coming in, and I really want to get to everybody properly. So not just send back a thanks, Neil email, the variety I sometimes get when I write to people. So bear with me on that. Do you remember, while we're talking about planes though, do you remember episode 111? Sounds like a type of plane. Talking to Laird K. It's called Up, Up and Away. His photos are just incredible of aircraft. There are, I sort of describe, in the interview I did as well, describe them as whale tails. You know, a lot of his images that he makes of aircraft, they're sort of akin to the animal kingdom, the way that he portrays these machines. And here he is talking about why people come to him to make pictures of what we take for granted as just the thing that takes us to business trips or on holiday. Laird K.
I think that's why clients come to me, is because they want photos of the plane. They want the beauty of the plane showcased. There's lots of people who photograph the travel experience, and that's certainly something people do. But what I photograph is the beauty of the plane, the beauty of the machine. I guess nowadays it's probably a bit controversial to say that I think machines are beautiful. There is grace and elegance in machines. And so what I try to show are the details that most passengers don't get to see, like the pattern of the rivets, the kind of the wings exposed, the parts that you see them and you realize, okay, this is essentially a handmade, beautifully crafted piece of machinery. It's a sculpture, and that's how I shoot my images. Yeah.
Laird K from episode 111. Actually, we have a very well-established photographer for many years. He makes these gorgeous pictures of aircraft and cars coming on the show soon. He said yes, but he's got such a busy work schedule at the moment that there's kind of a question mark on it. So it could be all go in about a week's time or not, and held for about 3 months. So maybe I'll hold on to his name for a second. But when I exchanged some emails with him in the last week, I got one back from him with some prospective dates. He said it's a bit tricky at the moment. He says I seem to be up in a cherry picker, and he was. There was a photograph of him above a Learjet taking photographs of the form of this aircraft, which reminds me of Laird K as well. What a job, eh? Fantastic. I mean, gosh, these days I'd just like to be on an aeroplane, frankly, going somewhere. Sorry, Greta. I didn't mean that. I didn't mean that. Anyway, I was while we're talking about aircraft though, I was about a month back, I was on on a photo walk in the countryside. I think it might have been the week that I finished off the walk in Oxford. Oh, I think so. Anyway, it was pretty much the last mail of the week time. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I was on my way back to Car or something. But I was walking alongside a farm and a hedge, and I saw I sort of peeked a view of the edge of a rotor blade from a helicopter. I thought, wow, look at that. What's that doing in the middle of nowhere? And I sort of peered through the hedge a bit more. Hang on, Neil. You'll get a reputation. And I saw a collection of what are called Gazelle helicopters. Beautiful. Gazelles are they were made by the French company, weren't they? But they're known as the Ferraris of the sky. I do have an experience of the Gazelle helicopter, and it was probably my reason for loving these aircraft so much. Even though with gallows humour, there's 1,000 ways to meet your maker in one. But that was when I was working in the radio. They had a roadshow feature on this particular radio station I worked, where he used to organise stunts from the roadshow for the crowds that were watching. I'm not quite sure how this really worked on the radio, but I got a stunt. I was given a stunt to go up and be with the Royal Navy Sharks, which was, they're disbanded now, a fantastic aerobatic team from the Royal Navy with helicopters, and they flew Gazelles. And I remember being with this pilot. I'd never been in one of these things before, and he went up high, and he kind of pointed the nose down. And he said, "Do you see this lever here?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "In a minute, I'm going to dump it right down." I said, "Right, what's going to happen?" He said, "We're going to fall." I said, "Right, like a piano," he said. I thought, that doesn't sound very good. Pianos, as far as I'm concerned, were never designed to sit 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 feet in the air. Anyway, he did it. I must admit, if you ever want a thrill ride, that's beaten everything that I've ever been able to do since. And that's probably the reason why I'm not really into thrill rides these days. Not my favourite pastime. Anyway, shall we? Oh, we should do a first thing that you see picture, shouldn't we? This feature seems to have taken on a life of its own. The first thing that you see. There are pictures this week on the show page that I'd love you to go and take a look at. They're from, I'm now going to call him just Grumpy Old Man with a Camera, because it makes me smile. He's a truck driver in America. Nearly says it's 6:21 in the morning. You got me at the beginning of the day. Your podcast is playing, and I'm driving on Route 197, or Route 197, wouldn't you say? A 2-lane in Woodstock, Connecticut, taken on an iPhone XR. I took your challenge. Oh yes, remember, we asked him to not just make a picture, but actually sound his 2-tone, or his 3-tone, or his 4-tone, or whatever's on board. He said, "I took your challenge, I blew my horn, disturbing the wildlife in the woods." Well, I'll send you the sounds when I can. Also, Theodore Stanner sent in a first thing that you see picture. He's usually in Sweden, but at the moment he's in Germany. Here's my first thing I could see photograph, Neil, while strolling the streets of Neustadt and of Weinstrasse. Have I got that right? Or Wienerstrasse. Wienerstrasse. That's more like it, isn't it? In southwestern Germany. There's something yet nothing of sorts, but it fits the bill. Shows the whereabouts of a fairly standard German residential area. See, everything looks interesting, you see. Not standard. You see, you say the word standard, but everything looks interesting when you don't actually live in the country of the pictures being sent to you. You think, oh, look at that. You know, that sort of observational radar, something a bit different, something new kicks in, doesn't it? Jan-Erik Mostrom, he sent in some horses and open fields, 4 fir trees, nicely done, from Dennis Brown Jr., Wallace Shackleton's Sky Bridge, being edited in Lightroom at his desk. You see, that's the first thing that he saw as I was setting you the challenge. Who else have we got? Eric Delorme's grass bowl picture. Well, it looks like a grass bowl from the hill on your iPhone. Craig Hughes, here's the first thing I saw. I was sat outside work enjoying the sun. 33 degrees here. Oh, I was busy putting on my shoe after taking some swarf that was stabbing my foot. For a change, I have these beautiful wild daisies next to me and not a smelly old machine or some stainless steel. Yes, usually the first thing that you see pictures of the factory floor, aren't they? Pedro Silva Torres in Portugal, in your office with the 3 pictures in front of you. I mean, they look to me like they're your escape. You'll see it if you go to the show page today, but you can see his view is of a street in front of him. So it's half basement looking onto a street, and then but in front of him he keeps these 3 pictures of open water, the ocean, the rollers. Oh, fantastic. That's like escapism in front of you, isn't it? Who else sent in pictures? Rob Merkiston, who has a dilemma and could not take one picture. He says, well, you asked me for this week's First Thing You See picture. I looked under the desk and I saw my furry friend, a cat, Ogma, taking a nap. Looking to my right, the chair beside me was occupied by Surya, the other cat, who wisely took a trip to the land of dreams. Oh, look at her, asleep. It's around about 27 degrees today. Oh, see, again, I'm feeling, look, it's not like that today. What are we now? 16, 17? It's gone a bit gloomy today, but 27 is catnap weather, isn't it? Yeah. Both the cats are named after gods, respectively Celtic and Hindu, by my girlfriend, which causes some interesting situations at the vet's office when calling us. So he's taken, well, in essence, he's taken 2 pictures. He couldn't choose which cat. And you know what cats are like. If they'd have seen a picture on the show page and one of them would have said, hang on a moment, where am I? So he sent 2 in, and I've joined them together. I'll loosely let that go on this occasion because I know the cats wouldn't forgive you otherwise. If your name's not being called, don't worry. I do have some fantastic First Thing That You See pictures. And we'll do our First Thing That You See picture officially later on in the show. Should we do it now? No, we do it later on. But thank you for the First Thing That You See pictures that are coming in. And if you want to join in with that feature, it is essentially when I give the word. So it might be at the start, it could be later on, it could be in the middle. When I give the shout, in essence, whatever you have to make a picture, whether it's a smartphone or a big DSLR or your mirrorless or whatever you've got to take a picture, to make a picture, that's when we make that picture. And then you send it in to the studio address, which is studio@photographydaily.show. Very important, please, if you could remember to make them 2,000 pixels wide. If some of them slip through larger or slightly smaller, not a big issue, but if you can, that would be fantastic. Here's one from Grant, Washington. Hello, Neil. I'm a fairly new listener to your show, and without a doubt, an enthusiastic photo walker. Welcome. I'm lucky enough to do this as a hobby, having a full-time job in logistics Monday through Thursday, the perfect 4-day working week. I've been thinking more and more, though, about starting my own photography business, beginning with portraits and perhaps weddings as a weekend occupation, and who knows, more in the future if I can find the confidence. Do you have any advice? I live in Perth, so I appreciate things might be a bit different to back home in Blighty. I emigrated 21 years ago with my parents from the not-so-sunny town of Sheffield, but I'm dreaming now. Dreaming of a photographic business, I assume, not necessarily a return to Sheffield. Although Sheffield's nice, there's nothing wrong with Sheffield, but it is slightly different to Perth, certainly. Not so much afternoon surfing going on in Sheffield. Well, surfing of the internet, probably. Not so much ocean surfing, that's for sure. I don't know. I mean, when somebody asks me for advice, I consider the fact that, yes, I've been working as a professional photographer for, 16 years now. But there's part of me that thinks, who am I to offer advice? I mean, I have the same daily issues as those that are sort of struggling to make ends meet sometimes. I have my own moments where I'm thinking, what am I doing? This is not quite right. When I'm looking at some of my work, I have these same sort of issues that we talk about when we discuss things like imposter syndrome. And so in my forever search for authenticity and wanting to be absolutely genuine and truthful with you, there are moments where I think, and I have done courses and I do mentoring, and I can only ever share what I know and what I've seen. But there are moments where you think, only those that have truly achieved and got to the top level should be the ones that mentor. But then I suppose that takes away those that are on the sort of the working floor of it. I suppose we all have something to offer. There was a who was it that I read recently? I can't remember her name, but she had only been in the industry for about a year when the pandemic struck. But her observations, I think, were priceless. I must try and find her name because Grant, she would certainly be somebody to drop a mail to. But, for what it's worth, the first word, what's the first word that comes to mind? Patience, Grant, patience. You're going to need an awful lot of it. Patience over panic. There we are, 2 P's, patience over panic. Because it's very easy in this business to think, you're not making headway very quickly, and you look around you. The problem is, and that this is one of the issues that social media delivers to us, isn't it? That when you start comparing yourself to other people and looking at other people's work, and you think, oh wow, where are how comes they're there and I'm here? What's the difference? And I often talk about this with my good pal Mullins. About the X factor. What is the X factor? How do some people have that X factor? What is it that makes it almost attracts a particular kind of work to them? There are some people that probably do have that X factor, but for most of those that we believe have the X factor, there's usually the 10-year overnight success story behind them, isn't there? This podcast is very similar to that. I'll level with you. There are moments over the last year when I've been watching some of my photographic friends doing taking a very, very different turn at the traffic lights or fork in the roads and setting up commercial photographic businesses, photographing food and various other things that have done exceptionally well. And I've been thinking, I've been building a podcast essentially, although obviously those that are patrons, I'm in huge debt to you in many respects. But essentially, a podcast, when you start doing something like this, it's like the ultimate, for me, the ultimate private photo project. Personal photo project where you're building a body of work. You have no idea whether it's one day going to be successful or whether that's even the plan for some people. But it has been the ultimate personal photo project in some respects. But I keep coming back myself to that word patience. And sometimes I have to be reminded of that by friends and colleagues and Sam, my wife. Patience, stay with it. You work really hard. This, see it through. We all need our life mentors like that. We certainly do. And indeed, the emails that I get from you, sometimes I don't think you appreciate that. Sometimes you're being that mentor for this whole process of making a podcast. So, yeah, patience over panic. What else? I suppose the first thing you could do, Grant, is go out, find yourself some people to photograph. That seems very obvious, I know, but not just friends. Go and try and find some. Not that your friends aren't interesting, but find some interesting folk that are in the city in Perth or just outside. There's some wonderful towns I know there's not lots and lots of them, but there are some wonderful towns just outside, aren't there? Go find some people with that have fascinating jobs, or I don't know, farmers or firefighters or people that work in conservation. It's endless. Go look for somebody who's mature of years. They usually have fantastic stories, wonderful lived-in stories and faces to boot. And I don't mean that in a cruel way. I mean that with plenty of due respect, really due respect as well. Not one of the due respects thrown in when you're having an argument. So you could do that. And then, when you've got yourself some stories, try some local press with them. I know this has worked I've read stories where this has worked reasonably well for some people who have made a photo story, then taken that photo story to local press. Because believe you me, local media, local press blogging websites, and I mean the list is endless really, in this digital age, are crying out for content. That's always the cry, the war cry, isn't it? Oh, we want content, we need more content. And so if you've got these incredible stories with your name as a byline, and maybe you've even written the article as well, there we go. I don't know what your writing skills are like, Grant, but if you can do that as well, and you've provided this entire story, fantastic. So, and then I suppose you mentioned weddings as well. Second shooting is the most obvious route here. Good second shooters are hard to come by, and usually second shooters obviously are building a portfolio for themselves. So inevitably, your second shooters move on. Not always, but often move on reasonably quickly. Unless there are some people that do second shooting now as a living. I know during the pandemic, I've spoken to a couple of people that have taken on the mantle of second shooting as their primary way of earning, and they're very happy to go out 2-3 times a week second shoot and not have all the retouching or the bother of having to try and find bookings. So second shooting is a good way to get some wedding experience, that's for sure. And then really enjoy the learning experience. Enjoy being the new boy on the block. It doesn't matter how old you are, how much experience you have. You have to start from somewhere. I remember earlier during the year talking to Miss Anne Harriman, who's not so much a new boy in terms of creativity, but certainly the last 18 months have been just an extraordinary year for Miss Anne. He was the first black male photographer to shoot a Vogue front cover. He shot some just incredibly potent Black Lives Matter reportage stories. I've seen his byline used alongside Harry and Meghan. Some of the stories that have been coming out over the last few months. He did a photo shoot, I think, of he did a private family photo shoot for them. I mean, the time has been just an incredible period for Miss Anne, and it doesn't come without its hard work. Shall we play a bit of? I tell you what, let's play a bit of Miss Anne Harriman from episode 143. An absolute delight to talk to him, and I think he's not just an influential but also very inspirational character and person to listen to, and photographer to listen to.
So many unthinkable, unspeakable, extraordinary things have happened to me in a 6-month period.
Yeah, I know.
I don't even know how to begin to answer that. What I would say is that I would love my lens to cover this the full spectrum, if you like, of the human condition. So that is everything from high fashion photography to personal works. I've just finished shooting 10 women that are survivors of domestic violence, and that to me is possibly the most important segment of work that I do. It won't get the attention of some of the other things that I do, but in terms of what I feel that is important to use this lens, it's to shine light on those whose stories are usually not told. And if I have this attention and this platform, I feel that I must use it. Everyone wants to make a buck, and I'm in a position to probably do that with some of my commercial relationships. But I'm also in a position to force attention on stories and people who desperately need to have their story told. So I think that's it. The combination of all this celebrity stuff and then reportage that covers everything from civil rights, climate change, climate justice, to personal projects that I believe the camera can add to.
Miss Anne Harriman from episode 143. I'll link, of course, to everybody that we talk about on the show page today. Shall we do a first thing that you see? I've been a bit tardy making my own photographs today, haven't I? And I do have a new toy with me. New toy time, yes, the X100V. I know, I've been talking about this, haven't I, for ages. Was there ever a good time to buy it? No, not really. Just answered my own question there, instantaneously. But it does make it easier to make some pictures as we're walking along. Usually, of course, you know that I've got my very manually set up X Pro 1 and Yashica 28mm vintage lens with me, which makes it hard to unless I've got the top pocket, but it's summertime now, so I don't have a top pocket to put the microphone in, so you can still hear me while I'm focusing and making all the adjustments on the camera I need to. But of course, it's not quite like that now, is it? Because I focusing, or I could use the X100. I could use it in a manual way, but I'm not going to. Well, I haven't got a top pocket. I might have some fun with that later on. But first thing that you see feature. So I'm gonna use my X100 today, my X100V. You can use whatever you like, because that's the only. Well, I've got my iPhone with me, but that's what I'm talking into right now, as you know. So I can't really use that, but I can use my camera. So grab the first thing that is in front of you that you can make a photograph with. So it could be a camera, could be a smartphone, could be, as we said before, could be a GoPro, anything at all. Other action camera variations are available. And I want you just to. We're going to give you a countdown, and on that countdown, pick up your camera and take a picture of the first thing that you see. Now, I quite like to think that everybody's on a Friday or some kind of photo walk while they're out there with their cameras. But it's not always true, and I now appreciate that this show is listened to by as many people sat down working than it is by those that are out and about walking. But this is the moment of the show where I want you to take a photograph and then send it to me by email. I'll remind you of the address in a moment. But here we go. First thing that you see. So right in front of me, a sort of gnarly collection of trees. I don't want to think too much about it. I'm changing my exposure slightly, very slightly. I'm just because there's a sort of shaft of light coming in. I don't want to overexpose the shot, so I've gone under by almost a stop. F2, shutter speed 100, and ISO 250. There we go. I might have to do something with that sound. I'm sure you can choose. Yes, you can. Of course you can. Choose different sounds. Is there one that's super loud? So normally I have my camera set on silent for when I'm working, or as silent as they can be if I'm using a DSLR, sort of purry, sort of soft shutter. But certainly with mirrorless, when I'm using mirrorless, I work a lot of the time absolutely silently. But for this, I like you to know when I'm making a picture. So I'm going to have to up the volume of the click, aren't I? Right, let's have a ramble through. Oh, by the way, yes, send them into studio at photographydaily.show. Almost forgot. Come on, Neil. Yes, studio at photographydaily.show. If you can, send them in at 2,000 pixels wide. But if they're a smidge less or a smidge more, no worries. As my friend Grant would probably say now, having moved 21 years over from Sheffield to being in Perth. No worries, he'd say. With a slightly more Australian twang, probably. What's a Sheffield accent with an Australian twang sound like? Right, let's have a ramble around the Photography Daily Facebook group, shall we? There's the most amazing, supportive bunch of photographers of all styles and abilities and interests in there. And some fantastic, well, personal, emotional, as well as photographic stories going on in there at the moment. And I'm going to start, actually, with Hannah Gimblett, who has, she's had a tough couple of years. Let's just put it that way, with illness and being bedbound during this time. So I'm pleased that, Hannah, you found the podcast and the community that's building around it to talk with and listen to and share with. And it's made you feel, Hannah said it's made her feel less isolated. Oh, well, you know, that makes me feel very proud. It really does. Not for me, but for the community and for the people that are growing within this show, and in particular this episode, which seems to be one of those episodes that it certainly draws the most feedback and the most listeners most weeks as well. So Hannah says, I've been unable to pick up a camera for a few months due to various issues, but I'm planning to this week. It's such a positive focus in my life. Even though I'm stuck in bed, I don't want to let that prevent me from pursuing my passion. Here's an image I captured with my X Pro 2, a 50mm f2, a few months ago of a lovely succulent. And then on the Facebook page, so you need to go to the Facebook. You need to join us now on that. But Neil, I don't do Facebook. Oh, start. You need to, just for Hannah's post alone. Honestly, you get this glorious, wonderful, what shall I call it? Subtractive picture. And what I mean by that is it's a soft picture, not focally, just in texture of this small succulent being devoured by the dark of the room around it. Or maybe you've put it against a background. I don't know. But the way, or maybe you've put it next to a window and you've underexposed the shot and just the succulent is being lit. But it's a wonderful picture. It's sumptuous, sort of rich, varied tones of green. All power to you, Hannah. And I'm looking forward to more of these pictures. Or a study. Should we call it a study? Yes, a study. Succulents. Or maybe just that succulent. We had a succulent, Hannah. We named it. We called it Stephen. I know, it's kind of a odd choice of a name for a succulent. I'm sure it had a proper Latin name, but we just called it Stephen. Jeremy Baker is out on the beach with us. I'm going to get this wrong. Is it an Airedale? Oh, I'm wincing as I say that because I know, Jeremy, you're screaming at me. Let's just call it a dog. Expressive picture of the pooch on patrol. And a big, very, very big, open, very inviting beach, he says, taken whilst it was a photograph that's on the Facebook page whilst listening to Photography Daily. The topic is more a question, which may well be rhetorical. What can't be put into some sort of perspective by a dog walk on a big empty beach? Answers on a postcard, he says. I'll tell you what, I'll throw that one open for you to answer. Email me on the show and I can share it with Jeremy. Or better still, pop into the Facebook group, look up that post and answer it there. I love walking. We don't have a dog, but I love walking Frankie, my brother and sister-in-law's pooch. We don't walk her anymore. We used to, because they have 9 to 5s and photography is a slightly different business. Sometimes I'd go and walk Frankie during the day, and I'd make pictures of Frankie, and she'd frankly get a bit bored with him after a while. I'm sure she used to look purposefully the other way. Come on, let's move on. Throw the ball for me. Yes. Diane Seddon posted with an ICM post, intentional camera movement. Now, there's something, I'm going to hold my hands up. I did not know about ICM photography at all until, I don't know, what, 2, 3, 4, 5 months ago, max, 6, max, I don't know. But ICM, which is becoming quite the thing, isn't it? And particularly with street photography, where you can't identify people at all in some countries now, can you? As she says, a trip to Cleethorpes today with some of the guys and gals from our camera club. I went out with the intention of playing with ICM and had a brilliant time. It felt so normal, yes. It has started to, hasn't it? At times. I've been out various sort of walks of late and not seen any masks at all. Well, I don't know what you think about that. Of course, some people in many countries that have a mask on rule all the time, even outside, outdoor places. But yes, there's been some normal moments, haven't there? We even had fish and chips on the pier. The donkeys were out, see? Now that is normal. Great picture. It's in the group, and you'll find it easily enough if you just search for Diane Seddon. And on the note of camera clubs, I've been feeling more and more inclined to look up mine of late. I think camera clubs are. Maybe this is another suggestion for you, Grant. I don't know what Perth has. Going back a few minutes now, what Perth has in terms of camera clubs, I don't know. But one of the things that camera clubs can be fantastic for is just driving ideas. They have regular competitions, and I know we've had this conversation that sometimes the judges get a tad too serious and sometimes look at the technical over the emotion. So I'm not quite sure how I'd do in any of the competitions. I think I'd have to bite my lip. But it would certainly be worth thinking about. I like the idea of a camera club. And then Chris Rogalski with some, Chris, these are wonderful, quiet pictures of leaves. I think one looks like it's suspended in air and the other is floating serenely in or on the water. And for those that are patrons of the show, me getting all made up and excited about serene and quiet pictures, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, you all know why. But he has, as they would say, again, down under in Perth, there's a lot of Australian coming in today. He has a doozer of a question in the group. Decided to go on a walk this morning, he says, with the lady. The lady was a great change of pace from Monday morning. Got me thinking about the following. Inner peace is just one choice away. Likewise, inner anger is just one choice away. Anything is one choice away. Wow. Do you know what? I had, Chris, I had a bit of a rotten morning this morning. I had one of those arguing with my elder son mornings. He won't mind me telling you, because he doesn't listen to this here show. But if he did, he'd probably say, "Oh, Dad, we do, don't we? We're very alike in many ways." And that comes out sometimes in our communication. I do my best, but, you know, I was so looking forward, and I'm so pleased I did come out on the Photowalk at the time that I did, because, boy, did I did I need it? And it sort of goes back to your thoughts there. Inner peace is just one choice away. I got in the car brought me out here, and I'm on my photo walk. Inner anger is just one choice away. I think if I'd have sat there and done my accounts today, I think the inner anger thing, that would have surfaced more easily. Hang on a moment, the sun's come out. I've been bathed in clouds for this entire walk. Now the sun's come out and I really want to I like these, again, the sort of subtractive pictures that we're talking about, where everything around sort of falls off to darkness. There's just like one patch of it's just scrub really. It's nothing special, but it's got the sunlight falling on it. Literally just this little patch of scrub. Oh, this could be a real something and nothing scrapbook shot. Hang on, can we have a louder shutter, please? Is that the most you can give me? I'll put my shots up, of course, on the show page today. I usually put them at the bottom. I like you to feature above me. Where were we anyway? Oh yes, he says the moment in between event and reaction is where you find choice. Oh, Chris, I'm gonna tag around with you. I think you speak a lot of sense. What is one thing you're going to choose today, says Chris, that will help you change your world? As above, so below. See, these are the people that hang out in the Facebook group. Now, I've been in a lot of Facebook groups, a lot of Facebook forums, and there's some very, very good ones, some cracking ones out there. I really like the one that we have for the other podcast that I present with Kev, my old mucker Kev, the Fuji cast. We're very lucky with those that hang around in there, and I think we're extraordinarily lucky with those that are in the Facebook group for the Photography Daily Show as well. It's a private group, so you have to knock on the door, show us your trainers. If we like them and they're not too dirty, you can come in. And I think we're over the 900 now. So do you know what? I'm really pleased with that. So it's not as large as some, but I tell you what, those that are in it, they're very thoughtful, and they don't mind sharing. They're people of all sorts of abilities, interests, strengths, knowledge. So thank you very much, Chris, for those. I tell you what, let's talking about knowledge and teaching, and just for the simple joy and pleasure this man gets of teaching photography. I spoke some while back with Brendan Barry. Do you remember? Yes, episode 196. Who builds cameras. He does. Builds cameras out of the most extraordinary things. You're going to say cheese block, aren't you, Neil? Yep, cheese block. He's built camera obscuras out of a caravan. And you know what? He's done all this thing, not necessarily all on a budget, but the caravan, I think the story was £150, wasn't it? Bought himself a real old beaten up caravan and essentially turned this caravan into the inside of a camera, invites people inside to look out and experience what in a kind of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids way, what it feels like to be inside the camera. And it was electric listening to him, that episode, listening to somebody who was, I think he might still be, is he still in commercial photography? Or is that all gone now? I'm trying to remember that part of the episode. But he certainly left that behind to teach, to experience, and to feel alive with his photography again. So this is Brendan Barry from episode 196.
I worked as a photographer, freelance and commercial for a number of years, and then I started making my own work and kind of engaging in more personal projects as I found more time and maturity and confidence. And I kind of did that for a number of years, but I always felt like I was sort of playing the role of a photographer, and I was kind of doing what I suppose the photography industry wants you to do: build projects, make a series of images that come together to do more than the sum of their parts. And I suppose I just felt a lot of my work was becoming quite derivative of the people that I was influenced by. And then, it's a long old story, but I started making cameras. And one of the first things that happened is people started responding to the cameras that I was making in a way more interesting and engaging way than they had to any of the images that I'd made. Not that, I'm proud of a lot of the work that I made, but that became really interesting. And then as I started to build bigger cameras, I could invite people inside and they could collaborate, I could teach and facilitate in making images. That's when everything kind of opened up, and then I sort of found something that was a bit more authentic, maybe a little bit more true to my kind of interests and passions, and being able to work with other people and to build and to make and just have a bit more fun, I suppose.
There we go, Brendan Barry. I might well try and have another chat with him at some stage. I have some more questions really from that show where he was building his own camera obscuras out of caravans, and even an old airfield, wasn't there, where he'd turn the air traffic control tower, the old tumble-down air traffic control tower, into a camera obscura. Fantastic. This is really interesting. I've walked, or rather, I brought Carl, who was grumbling a bit because he said, hang on, it's a walk over, are we going home? I said, no, I just want to change location a little bit. He said, what? In fact, more like, what? Because I was in the woodland, but it wasn't really, it was kind of leading somewhere, but then it came sort of dead end, really. So I've sort of driven another 2 or 3 miles down the road, and I'm on the, sometimes you come across these sort of concrete paths, which you think, hang on, was this once military? Was this once, because we had a lot of airfields around here in Berkshire, and it feels like, why would you suddenly in the middle of nowhere have well-built concrete paths and roads that are just overgrown now? It wasn't the railway, was it? No, it wasn't. But let me just, I'll get a picture, you can see it. There's some firs at the end, some really tall firs. Hang on, there we go. What are we at? 750th, f3.6, ISO 160. I always say, you know me, underexposed just a little bit so I can do more in post-production afterwards. Yeah, I don't know where it leads. It's a concrete path leading into the bush. Wow, so to speak. Right, we don't do birthday mentions usually because there's not really a because. It's just not like a radio request show, is it? But there's always a but, isn't there, in life? But Peter Stockworthy, yes, you're worth it. Your wife Bridget emailed to surprise you. It's your 40th this weekend on the 27th, so I hope you're listening to this at the time you're supposed to be listening to it. She knows you don't miss an edition of the Photowalk show, so she wanted to say 2 things. First up, happy birthday, happy 40th birthday. I understand it's not been the easiest of times for you health-wise over the last year because of that horrible COVID word. But also to say, even though you couldn't do the 40th Bash Euro photo trip to Barcelona this year that you were really looking forward to, those tickets, they're still ready for the journey next year. Happy birthday, lots of love from all the family. There we go. And if you do get to Barcelona next year, which I'm sure you will by the sound of it, Bridget's going to make sure of that. Hang on. We really have gone. We've gone 4-wheel drive territory. Ouch. Stingers. Straight away. Ow! Again. Not having this. I'm going to walk on the farm track a bit. It's turned into farm track. Yes, so we want to have some of those pictures from Barcelona, please. Definitely. Send them. I can wait a year. If you can wait a year to do the trip, I can wait a year to receive them. How on earth am I supposed to get through there? All right, in for a penny, as they say. Good job I've got my walking trousers on. There's a footpath sign there. Are you sure? You couldn't walk in there? Not unless you've got a machete and can beat the way open. Heavens. Right. Very important mention for the photo essays part of the website. Do you mind me doing that for a moment? Because there's been some terrifically creative photographers that have been contributing to the photo essays part of the website, and I'm enormously grateful for that. Usually, I like there to be a few more words to go with the essays these days. Not necessarily a whole article, but perhaps some personal thoughts and feelings about why you've sent in the stories that you have sent in. And if you're thinking, what is this photo essays thing you're talking about, Neil? I'll tell you. It's if you go to the website, photographydaily.show, look up to the top, and along the menu bar, or the menu items, or the menu, you'll see the word photo essays. And there within, there's essays, pictures, stories that people have sent in, that listeners have sent in, that are fantastic, some superb stuff in there. And yes, usually, or of late, they've had a few more words associated with them, because it's lovely to read your thoughts about why you photograph what you do. But this one doesn't really. The first one I'm going to tell you about doesn't have so many words. Well, it's from David Brown, and it's a short piece. Ooh, what's that in the undergrowth? Ooh. If I was in any other country but the UK, I'd be worried. It seems to be following me. Yeah, David Brown, a short... Go away. Can you hear that? No, it stopped. It's like something out of a movie. Quick, move, Neil. David Brown, a short piece, succinct piece, called simply Dad's Shed. Yes. And if you have a dad in your life, or a father figure, guardian figure who has... it could be a mum's shed, couldn't it? It's no reason why not. Has a shed, you'll know exactly what I mean. It's a domain. It's almost a country of its own, isn't it? You should have a passport to go into Dad's shed. Now this definitely, yeah, there was something that used to be here military-wise, because I can't get to it through the amount of stingers. But over there's almost like okay, this is Urbex now. We've moved into Urbex. There is a building that looks like it was a shelter. I'm going to try and get it. I'm not quite sure whether this will come out in the photograph or not, because it's right through the stingers. But you might just be able to see a brick shelter. Shutter speed 100th, f3.6, ISO 640. Let's see if that... it's not really showing itself. Where were we? Yeah, Dad's shed. Dad's shed. My dad had a shed. And yeah, it was a special place. I tell you what, though, it was very, very organised. Everything was in long racks, straight racks, organised. Not quite like some of the sheds I've been in. I remember Mark Seymour, who was the photographer that covered his father's battle with dementia, and part of the film that I shot with Mark about the photographs that Mark was making about his dad was shot in Dad's garage. And yeah, he had all his I think various sort of screw and bolt sizes were all sort of labelled properly, diligently. So yeah, sheds can be a very special place, can't they? Dad's shed. So that's one of the stories. And then there's a wonderful, wonderful observational piece by Andrew Hardacre, who is one of our patrons and supporters of the show from afar in Hong Kong. Andrew joins in regularly when I post the Thursday More episode, which you can only hear on the Patreon channel. He regularly joins in with debate and conversation. And well, I tell you what, his photo essay here, there's some proper Easter eggs in the piece that he's written and in the photographs as well. I love the inclusion of one. There's a photo that you made, Andrew, of the bay in Hong Kong where you live. With there's a floating object, let's just call it that, but it's wonderful. It's just sometimes these small observations, these tiny things that aren't necessarily a big focal point of the picture, but they make the picture. He says, without sounding too arty-farty about it. There's a shop in our town called Arty-Farty. True, there is. Our Jack, our eldest, went for some graffiti lessons there. He's a great artist, brilliant artist. So I love that photo, tiniest feature in that picture. But I also love the piece that you wrote and the words that you wrote. Andrew's words: photography reminds me of golf. You can walk all day and get nothing, and you wonder why you bother. Then you get one good shot and you can't wait to get out again. You reminisce about your birdies and your eagles and pray for a hole-in-one, that magical lucky shot that you want to frame and hang. Gary Player famously said, the harder I practice, the luckier I get. But most of the time, it's bunkers and bogeys. Then further down, he talks about his interest in street photography. Neil, you're reading us the whole piece. You have to go. I'm not going to read you the whole piece. I don't mean to read too much, but I do want to read a bit of it. And then I want you to go off and find the pictures that go with it on the show page. Street, he says, which is what Andrew's into, is a broad canvas. Often the photos I shoot are about light, geometry and patterns as much as people. I reject the idea that street photography can only be about quirky juxtapositions or shots designed to shock. If it has to fit in a box, it's not for me. I don't like labels. I've not appreciated until recently how restrictive the EU has made candid photography. Careful now, let's not get too political. It seems you can no longer photograph people who can be recognised without their written consent. We kind of touched on this earlier, didn't we? Many of the classic photographers of the last century would probably be in jail today. A classic case of good intent overwhelming common sense. Well, I agree with that. Wherever these laws, these dictates about street photography should happen. Asia is somewhat distanced by the constraints imposed by the custodians of the Butter Mountain, but there's certainly still a heightened sensitivity. Anyway, there we go, that's enough. You can read more when you go to the show page and see the wonderful pictures that Andrew's made, black and white pictures of Hong Kong and the Bay Area. And those two, I consider there to be two sort of Easter egg kind of photographs that are worth you looking at. And if you'd like to send in your own photo essay, then I'd be delighted to hear from you. All you have to do, well, yes, first of all, make a story. Now, don't be thinking it has to be clever. If it's something that's personal to you, if it's something that's, I don't know, emotional, if it's just your journey to work, I'm just trying to think. I mean, photo stories abound, don't they? You can make a photo story about anything at all. I mean, that's in essence what this show is about every single week, isn't it? That I take a wander and the story kind of develops. I make pictures as I go along. Sometimes more pictures than other times, granted. Sometimes I'm more inspired to make photographs than other times, granted, but it's a photo story that develops every single time. Send them to, yes, I'd like to have some words, by the way, as well, yeah. So, and it's good to know, rather than it be what we call in the Facebook group a photo dump, where you just leave a picture and run and wait for people to press the like button. No, we like to know a little bit more about the why behind it. Doesn't have to be a book. Just a few words, a few paragraphs. Send your words and your pictures, 2,000 pixels wide, please, to studio@photographydaily.show. Studio@photographydaily.show. And if you want to see these wonderful stories, photography is like golf and Dad's shed, then go to the website photographydaily.show and go to today's show page. But as always, I will leave a link in the show notes. There we go. A little bit of inspiration for you to go out and make your own photo story this weekend or this week, whenever you're listening to the show. This undergrowth, this bush, is turning it's turning into a jungle. So it is. Couldn't possibly come out with a machete, could I? Can you imagine that being stopped? Where are you going, sir, with that machete? Or on a photo walk? Really? Would you like to step this way? I have a feeling this week's Photo Walk show is going to be a long one. I can't seem to find... Last week's was just about a minute under, wasn't it? A minute or two. The week before was an hour 15. I'm trying to get to this hour, and I think this is going to be longer. Apologies. You may have to make 2 photo walks on this particular one this week. Friday Photo Walk, me with my microphone and my camera, my new toy, my X100V. Don't call it a toy, it's a working beast. Yes, that's my excuse, that's why I have it. And, us with our cameras, really. Spending some time together out in the countryside. You know me, I prefer to take my walks. They're always countryside walks. I'm no landscape photographer, but I do like to make my walks in the countryside. And often where I'm away from people, get some very strange glances when you're talking into a microphone. You really do. Just a reminder from earlier, if you haven't joined the Facebook group yet, we have a dedicated Facebook group for the show. Love to see you in there. And for those that support the show, it really does make a difference. Patreon, for the price of what is, in the UK terms, £3 is where we start. Price of a fancy latte, maybe a touch of a cake as well. I don't know. You can be plus sales tax. You can be a supporter of the show, and we send you every single week. We send you a show, a patron-only show. We let you know about a patron-only show. You can open up on the very easy-to-use app where you can listen to the More episode, which we have a book club in as well at the moment. And then I just thought the other day of a name for. I want to send out some more links. I think I'm going to call it impressions. Things that have made an impression upon me, like films that I find or photographs that I see, or websites that I've really enjoyed sort of spending my hours with 3, 4, 5 Garibaldis looking through, that sort of thing. So that'll be sent out. You get that as a Patreon link. And of course we do our monthly get-together on Zoom, where you also get a photo challenge as well. So Patreon and the Facebook group, thank you to those that are a part of it. It really, truly does make a huge difference. As much as I'd like to do this purely as a hobby, and believe you me, I have said this honestly, hand on heart, or rather page on heart there, I mean this. I've often said, when we play the lottery game, what would you do? I've often said, well, I think I'd just bury myself deep in photography daily. That I would. It's become not just a passion project. There's nothing wrong with that, but something that I'm really very, very eager to build a community within. I see the most wonderful community built up around Humans of New York. And of course, that's got a commercial edge to it as well. But that project in itself, the community that grew out of it, is something that I'm deeply impressed by, and I absolutely adore the work that Brandon made. And I did reach out to him to see if he'd come on the show, but so far, no can do. Who knows in the future? We should have done this last week because the story was perhaps more current at the time, but it's a story it's a photographic story as well now, that across the world. If you support football of the round ball variety, we're in the Euro Championships at the moment, Euro 2020, which weren't renamed 21. I think we went through this last week. They've been shoved through to 2021, but they've retained the name 2020. Maybe they had too much merchandise bearing the year. But the first week of the Euro Football Championships, and were a week or 2 weeks ago now. These weeks go by so quickly. It was Denmark's opening game, and one of their stars, Christian Eriksen, suffered, unfortunately, cardiac arrest on the pitch. And the latest news is that he's having an ICD fitted, which is a small device placed under the skin, connected to the heart with thin wires, and sends electrical pulses to regulate abnormal heart rhythms. I did look that one up. But it did raise some important, pertinent questions actually about photography during those moments where he was on the pitch. I mean, he effectively just, if you haven't seen it, look, I've seen it. It was on the news, but I've not made a habit of going back to look at it again. That's for sure. But he effectively just face planted. I mean, he fell forward. He had a cardiac arrest, and that was it. Just fell forward. And initially, nobody really seemed to know what was going on. And then one teammate, I can't remember the teammate's name, it was in this article, but I didn't copy paste that bit, was so quick thinking, essentially put him on his side so that he could clear the airway. And doctors have said that made a huge difference in whether he would be here today or not. But so that happened. It was on the football pitch, and he was receiving treatment for, it was just shy of half an hour, I think. And I think the whole thing lasted from falling down to going out of the stadium by ambulance to a hospital, something like half an hour. And Lars Hegaard the Dane, one of our regular contributors, thank you Lars, sent me this Google translated document of a piece featuring a sports photographer called Lars Ronborg, and he photographed it. And he saw the incident through the lens, and everything was photographed. The lifeless Eriksen alone in the grass, the kneeling teammates around him, the doctor's violent heart massage, the electrodes, the white sheets, the tears, the despair. These are the words that he wrote. At that time, it's the image of a dead man, he said, and it doesn't go to the outside world. That's what he decided. It was a piece about the photographer who made those pictures, the courage, the integrity not to print it. And it raises some really important questions, I think, about how we act as photographers, and that's why Lars sent it in. I'm thankful for it as well, Lars, and I meant to do it last week on the Photowalk when it was slightly more current, I suppose. But people are still talking about it. Not a television show seems to go past about Euro 2020 without somebody mentioning this incident, of course. But he said, shoot, this is the photographer, and ask afterwards. That's the way it is. I don't think any photographers in the park held back, but there's a world of difference between photographing and then handing over a picture one can sense is over the line. Do you press send or do you delete? That's the crucial question. And so Lars Rombog, he decided to shoot and photograph, but he didn't make pictures close up. He didn't take the electrode pictures or pictures of Eriksson's partner being consoled by the Danish goalkeeper. He did make one picture right at the start when nobody really quite knew what was happening, and he sent it. But look at this, a network issue for once. You know, how often do we have network issues and you sort of, oh, I can't believe it, send. But nope, this one didn't. It just didn't send. So it never got to Getty or any of the other places that he usually sends to. A question of morals and ethics. He still has pictures on the hard drive, but as he says, he's got them. I've got flies all over me. One woodland to another. I'm going to go home covered in small flies. A question of morals and ethics, he says. And it was fascinating to read his account. So these pictures do exist, but not for the outside world, it would seem. Thank you, Lars, for sending that in. And I am left wondering what I may have done. I mean, I've never been in that kind of news situation. I don't work in those kind of circles, but I do wonder what I might have done. I'm sure I wouldn't have sent those pictures out. Absolutely sure. Quick one from Toby Morgan. Good to hear again from Tom Stoddart, episode 238, talking about fantastic journalists, photojournalists. I sometimes wonder if these are good times or hard times for photojournalists. So many things to photograph, but not enough money to make it worth doing. A catch-22, but thank you for the episode. I remain positive about the future of picture making. Me too, actually. And there were moments, I think, where Tom sounded understandably sort of downbeat, is that the correct word? About the future of the about the future of photojournalism. Worldwide, because of course it's been undervalued by the magazines, by those that used to print these very important centre spread stories in the world to see. And often it was the first way that people got to find out about famine and get angry enough about it to then sort of. And I think the pictures coming out of Ethiopia, wasn't it, that angered Bob Geldof so much when he'd seen them that he'd sort of. Then we have Live Aid, don't we? It was a good point. Shall we play some from that episode number 238, with I like to think somebody who's becoming a reasonably good friend of the show, Tom Stoddart.
Photographs by themselves don't make a difference. You know, it's a drip, drip, drip effect. And I think it's a mistake to think that, and the real tragedy of photographers not covering serious events, not covering, as I say, Yemen and other areas. I mean, today, the other story on the news is about we're cutting aid to places. And there won't be any photographs. There's no photographers out there doing, work that illustrates that. And I believe that that's wrong. That's bad, because it gives a false sense of security. It means that young people think that we all live in a world with medicine, and we all live in a world with clean water and electricity on tap and whatever. And it encourages, more of the have-it-all society if they're not exposed to anything except selfies and Instagram stuff and whatever. So I think it's a great shame that there isn't at least a small area that illustrates that not all the world is as lucky as we think it is.
There we go, Tom Stoddart from episode 238. How am I going to get out this bit? This is going to be an interesting end to the show this week, isn't it? Neil stuck in fields, stuck in the bush, the undergrowth. Let me out! Come rescue me next week. If I'm not here, you'll know I'm still. If I'm not here, you'll know I'm still here. Well, you know what I mean. One from Colin Mayer. This one is this one actually is very current, isn't it? In Australia, sadly found that your shores are permeable to this dreadful virus. Hello, Neil. Thanks for doing the podcast. It's something I enjoy listening to while I'm out on my walks. A kind of mindfulness meditation of sorts to take my mind off other bothersome things. It was whilst listening to the story in episode 236, the dangers of hippo attacks, where I thought of the similarity to our current situation. These wild beasts come from the murky river, submerged and hidden from sight, go underneath canoes and flip over humans that dare to brave their world. And it got me thinking, that these adventures undertaken freely are similar to our journeys taken during this pandemic, often pleasant and enjoyable, yet taken with a certain amount of interpretation. It inspired me to write my first ever photo essay. Wow. I hope you don't mind, as it's a little brief. Oh, I don't mind. Let's hear what you have to say. These are the words from Colin. The next wave. You don't always see it coming. That one rogue wave. It can catch you out if you're not prepared. Today in New South Wales, we saw the start of what might be the next wave. Where did it start? Patient zero from somewhere unknown. The destructive power comes crashing into our island shoreline, catching us unaware. Our government leaders act quickly, doing all they can. Stop the movement of people, no travel, no signing, no dancing, no mingling. Too late. Some people have already been soaked and need to lie low, shivering with fever and fear. School holiday travel plans with the family in awry. No trip to Queensland. Photos of Cairns. Corunda. Oh, Corunda. I've been to Corunda. That's the railway, isn't it? Corunda. I'm sure it's the railway. Wonderful place. We went there. Barren Falls. All now dreams of a close future suddenly swept away. Stay firm-footed and strong. Look after yourself and those some things that actually matter. Like stormy waves, this pandemic will eventually pass. Keep up the good work, and thank you again for Photography Daily. Take care. Colin Mayer. Funnily enough, I did write back to Colin and said, what a wonderful essay. We need the pictures, because I couldn't actually put it on the photo essay part of the website until we had the pictures. And now I've got the pictures, and now I'm mentioning it on the Photowalk, and it's kind of, yes, it's a photo essay on the Photowalk, if you don't mind, Colin. And I'll include those pictures. They were amazing. And I'm going to link to his website, actually, which is jocoma.space. It's full of the most delicious big vista landscapes and very wild seas, which, of course, that was the premise of this photo essay, wasn't it? And I tell you what, I fall, Colin, literally fall into your black and whites. It's an expression I have for black and whites. When I find a black and white picture that not a salad of grey, something that's truly black and white, contrasty, rich, deep, meaningful. Yeah, I love that kind of stuff. And your pictures, just the sort of thing that I really enjoy. So here's one from Robin Chun with some pictures again for you to go and see on the show page today, which I'll link to with his Insta as well. Hello, Neil. Here are some photo walks of mine in Bath and Bristol, or Brizzle, as you so eloquently put it. My chosen genre is street, where I look for that old cliche of the unusual in the usual, and generally shoot in colour. Robin Chun. Yes, I'll put those pictures on the show page today. Love Robin's pictures. Fantastic. And actually, it was a nice rice. What was it? Rice smile? Or just I recognised anyway some pillars, which you would have shot in. I'm sure they will have been shot in Bath. I'm sure I recognise those pillars. So what I've done is, underneath the fantastic street pictures that you've done, I've just put one street photograph of my own that was made in Bath about probably 3 years ago. I went on a street photography course that was run by my old mucker Kev Mullins, and I'm sure I made that picture out on that particular course that day. So I popped it on the show page so you can see my interpretation, my same pillars interpretation. There we go, that's what I'll call it. So here we go. Last mail of the week time. Is that E minor? No. C major? No idea. This is from Marie Oxenberg. Hello, Neil. I've become an avid photo walker with this show, although I admit just 2 years into my newfound hobby with boyfriend Mark. Are we still allowed to call them boyfriends in our late 40s? She says. I think so. Really appreciate the words of wisdom from your guests that you sprinkle like a surprising spice that your palate doesn't quite see coming. You may already know this, but because you've started to talk about urban exploration, you might be fascinated to learn about a website we found. It's called 28 Days Later, so these are the numericals, 28dayslater.co.uk, which, if you're thinking about getting into looking around old buildings, is an incredible resource. full of reports and forum activity where photographers and explorers alike help each other know what's out there. Its state, its safety, and all kinds of stuff. Beware where you tread in the site, which is appropriate given the context. Yeah, I didn't know what you quite meant by that, but I did go look it up, and I now know exactly what you mean. Anyway, she says, keep up the good work and enjoying the longer shows too. But we really wouldn't mind if you made them 2 hours. Well, I'm not quite sure the world is ready for that. But I've been saving your email for a couple of weeks because there was something from a Chris Orwig show we aired where he talks about how to end a photo shoot or anything really, including a podcast. Just couldn't remember who'd said the words. In the end, one morning, early doors, this is how diligent I am, I remembered it was Chris Orwig. And it was, I tell you what, it was playing on my mind. So I went and listened to the episode and found it. Here's Chris Orwig from episode 119. But equally, I'm going to throw back to the advice I tried to give to Grant Washington earlier about being a photographer professionally. This actually works, I think, as a closing piece in the show. How to end a podcast, how to end a photo shoot.
And the part of the exit or the ending the interview, like you were saying,
Yeah.
most of my students make the error of not ending well. And so I try to tell them, I'm like, it's like a dinner party or something. When it's over, you don't just like say, go away, or you don't just walk away. You walk the guest out to their vehicle, or you walk them to the door. You know, you make full connection. Like the last moment of the shoot is so important, and how you end it, what you say, the eye contact you use, the rhythm of your the way you're moving your body, all these things, again, back to the wolf, that you would never just be like, nailed it, gone, or whatever. Like, I got what I needed to get, this thing's over, it's in the bag, you want a little bit of that, even like you were saying that question, like, did we get everything? And the answer is no. Or the dinner party's over. It's like, what, this could keep going on forever, but yet
Yes.
it's time to end. And that's okay. It's kind of that mystery of life.
You can hear more of Chris Orwig in episode 119. Well, it's been a mammoth episode, hasn't it? I got a bit carried away, didn't I? I promised you an hour a few weeks ago. We seem to be stretching them slightly. 1,000 lines, Mr. James. I must pay more attention to detail. But, and there's always a but, didn't I say? You've been stars and sent much food for thought this week and said such amazing things in the Facebook group and been kind with your DMs and your mails, of which we depend upon for this show. So, I just couldn't help myself. And don't stop. Keep sending to studio@photographydaily.show. studio@photographydaily.show, so that I can feature you in next week's mailbag edition. Send your pictures too, of course, and those first things you see pictures, if you rose to the challenge this week, that is. I'm hoping next week's show may come from an exhibition being staged by a listener just about an hour down the road, which is not far from another place I really want to visit to do a photo walk. A prehistoric monument, perhaps the most famous one in the UK, the 3,000 years BC original flat pack, which bolted together with a bit of heaving and pushing and the occasional cursing, much the same as we do now with the amazing Billy bookcase. Stonehenge, in a week to come. Be sure to visit today's website show page for links to guests and all the things discussed. You'll find a link on the description in your podcast player app. Thanks to mpb.com, the number one team when it comes to buying used, selling used, or trading in Europe, the UK, and the States. Music in the show was from artlist.io, and I look forward to photographing with you, hearing from you, and talking with you next time.
There we go. Here's Car. Hello, Car. Oh dear, we're going somewhere else now. No, just 2 locations. Don't be grumpy. I think you might like the jaunt out. Well, look, I'm here now. Let's head home. What's all those flies all over you? Oh, I seem to be covered in tiny white flies. Look. Ugh. They've all come off the... Is it wheat? Wherever they are, I've just been hoovered. Would you mind clearing yourself off outside the car? Really? Oh, just let me brush. No! That's hoovered carpet, that is. God, you are fussy. Right. Can I get back in now? No, or go on.
Photography Daily is a Loading Zone production.